So we start with basics. So even before going into the making of Constitution, even before seeing the preamble, let us see some basics, trying to understand some basics, understanding the concepts of what is government. These are, some of them are political science concepts. In your political science books you would find, but let us try to see them, because sometimes questions from these very basics are being asked. What is state? What is country? What is nation? What is government? What does polity convey? And what is constitution? What is constitutionalism? These all we shall see before going into the making of the Constitution. When you say polity, polity is the organized form of government. It is like the structural form of government. And if you want to understand the polity of a country, if you want to understand the organized form of government of a country, you should ask few questions. Then any country in the world, if you ask few questions, you would understand their form of government. If you ask with respect to how is the government formed, so let us say you have gone to Saudi Arabia, you have a friend there, you met him there, and then you ask certain questions. Are there elections in your country? Who rules your country? Do you elect your rulers? Or is it ruled by one person? Or is it ruled by some persons? If you ask these questions with respect to how is your government formed, then you would understand the polity of their country. So the person, if you ask, do you have elections? The person in Saudi Arabia would say, no, we do not have elections. That is, we do not elect. So if you say, are there elections in India? Do we have elections? Yes, we do have elections. We elect our representatives, the lawmakers, and also onto the government. From there you would see government, the executive of the day, government of the day also forms. So we elect our governments, the one which enjoys majority and accountable to the legislature, our type of government, that is parliamentary form of government. Okay, that is going deeper, but yes, we do have elections. There may be some countries which do not have elections. Or is there a hereditary rule? Does the son of the ruler also become the ruler? So is that how government is formed? So if it is hereditary rule, maybe it's like hereditary monarchy. It could be hereditary monarchy or aristocracy. Sometimes aristocrats, nobles, people of high noble birth, the kith and kin of the king or these nobles, aristocrats. Maybe it's like hereditary aristocracy. That could be there. Or if it's one king or queen who is ruling, so then monarchy is inheriting the throne. Elections won't be there. So if that is how government is formed? That should be asked. And who rule? Who does the supreme power lie with? Is it rule of the people? If it is rule of the people, it is democracy. Is it rule of one person? If it's rule of one person, it could be autocracy. It is autocracy. Or is it rule of few? If it is rule of few, it is oligarchy. rule of one person, autocracy, I told you. In autocracy, there could be like an absolute monarchy, it could be absolute monarchy. Again, monarchy you have seen, the king or queen, one person who is ruling. It could be like that, absolute monarchy, or it could be dictatorship. It could not, sometimes it need not be the one person who is ruling. That person need not be hereditarily. He may have acquired power somehow. Or maybe, he has overthrown the government. He has become too powerful. And the one person is ruling. So, he may be a dictator. So, those all becomes your autocratic rule. Autocracy, we say. Okay. And if it is rule of a few, oligarchy. Again, there are types of oligarchy. We need not go into all the types. Okay. So, few people. It could be few elite people. It could be few technocrats. If it's technocrats, it becomes technocracy. It could be few wealthy people who are ruling. So, yes, there are chances that few people are the rulers. Okay. So, there are types like kleptocracy, technocracy, like that. There are types. You need not go into depth. You can just say that this is all oligarchy. It is ruled by few. Or is it rule of military? Is military ruling? Then it could be like your military junta. Military junta rule. Like how you are seeing in Myanmar now. So, if you have a friend in Myanmar and you go and ask her, who rules your country? How is the government formed? Previously it was democracy, but military has overthrown, and military, it's like a coup. So we say sometimes military, army, they go for a coup. They overthrow the existing government and they start ruling. Group of these military generals, they may be actually ruling. So it's a rule by this military junta, like how it is there in Myanmar now. So that may be there. Or it may be if there is no rule, nobody knows, if there is a complete lawlessness, absence of law. If there is lawlessness, absence of rule of law, absence of law at all, there is no law, there is nobody knows who rules. It's all chaotic. Then we say it is anarchy. Then it is all we say anarchy, we say. Okay. So, generally we see either it is through elections or hereditary rule. That's how we see. It could be democracy, or there are dictatorships. You see North Korea, a dictatorship. Okay. So, it could be generally autocracies or democracies is what we come across. Of course, there are few places ruled by military junta as well. Earlier, there were few places where there were oligarchies and even anarchy, only like few instances of anarchy also. But generally, there is one or the other form of government. So, how is the government formed? That gives you an idea. Okay, by asking these questions, you get an idea how is the government formed. So, polity means organized form of government, the structural form, the relations of these institutions of government. That is what you understand through polity. Okay, and there is another question to be asked. How many levels of government do you have? Do you have a single government that pervades throughout that country, or do you have a federal structure? Do you have a federal level of government as well? Do they have federation? Is it a federation? Do they have states or provinces or cantons, you would say? So it could be states. In India we call states. In Canada we call provinces. So what about the federated states? At that level also do they have government? So how many levels of government are there? It is a single. Is it single? It's only one throughout the country. Like how we see in UK, is it like that? Or is there a federal system, a federal structure in place? Like in India, in US, that we are speaking about. So how many levels are there of government? By that also you understand that there can be a central government, or union government, and then there is a state government. Then there are relations between these union government and the state government. So in India, yes, we are federal. Okay, and the other part that the questions we need to ask is, what is any government? When we speak of, we have three organs: the legislature, the executive, judiciary. Okay, so when you speak about dictatorship, or like a totalitarian state, or even some monarchies in which there could be chances that all these three powers are vested in the hand of one person. Whereas when you are going to democracies, modern democracies, you would see that there are relations between legislature, executive, judiciary, and there could be separation of these powers. So what is the relationship between legislature, executive, and judiciary? You must be looking at. And is there separation of powers? If there is separation, is there a strict separation, or is there an overlapping? So that also should be seen. For example, in the United States, your legislature, executive, judiciary, they are strictly separated from one another. Whereas when you see but they have a presidential system, their system is different. Whereas in parliamentary form of government, you would see that the legislature and executive, you would see an overlapping, you would see. Okay, so in India, in the UK, you would see that the judiciary, of course, is separate, but you would see that executive is, you would see like a subset of legislature you would be seeing. So there is an overlap of legislature, executive, or you would say executive becomes like a subset of legislature. So strict separation we do not have with respect to legislature and executive, but with respect to judiciary we do have strict separation. So by understanding the relationship between legislature, executive, and judiciary, the organs, you get an idea of the type of government they have. So any country you take, by asking these questions, by understanding how is the government formed, what are the levels of government, and also the relationship between legislature, executive, judiciary, by understanding them, we get an idea of their polity, their organized form of government, we get an idea. Okay, so government, when we say government, we speak generally that it has three organs, or we say three institutional components, we say. Three components you can say, or three organs we say, or three branches like that. Also it is called the legislature. Legislature, when we see, it is nothing but the branch which makes laws, the laws of the land that it makes. Then the executive is one which is responsible for administration of those laws, execution of those laws, implementation of those laws, executing those laws, and administration. For this, your executive is responsible. And in a broader sense, when we say government, we speak of these three organs. In common parlance, whenever we refer to government, when we say government of India, when we say government of Karnataka, when you use the term government, we are mostly referring to the executive. We are referring to the executive when we speak in a common parlance. As a concept, when we say government and its organs, when we speak about, then we are also referring to the legislature and judiciary. But in general, when we speak, when we say government, we are referring to the executive. Okay, and judiciary. Judiciary is that branch of government which is responsible for interpretation of laws. So this is the one which makes laws. This one implements laws. Implements laws, the execution of laws, and also your day-to-day administration also you would see the executive does. And when it comes here, interpretation of laws as well as administering justice. Administering justice is also the function of judiciary along with interpretation of laws. Okay, so in India when we say legislature, we are referring to the president also, the president of India, the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, together the parliament when we are speaking about. This is at the union level I am speaking about. Okay, at state level also you have legislature. The executive, when we speak about, we are referring the president, okay, the vice president, the council of ministers and all. Of course, much more elaborately, we'll also see constitution, who all are placed within the executive we'll be seeing later. Judiciary, the Supreme Court, the High Court and the lower courts, also called as subordinate courts. They are all there in the judiciary. Okay. Then we'll see some of the basics, some concepts with respect to like democracy. So sometimes questions are just asked, testing, because democracy you have been, you know what is democracy, you have been hearing about democracy from your school days. Okay, yes, democracy, when we say democracy, you immediately what strikes your mind? Rule of the people, by the government, when we say it formed by the people, for the people. This all you have been studying of the people, you have been studying all this. Yes, that is true. But forms of democracy are also there. We have, so democracy when we are speaking about, remember it is that the supreme power is vested in the hands of people. In the hands of people. People are the rulers. So demos and kratos. Demos, when we say people, kresi, rule. So rule by the people, rule of the people we are saying. Okay, and they wield real power. People are the rulers. So that is democracy. Unlike you have seen autocracy, military junta rule, oligarchy, those are different. So those kinds of autocracy, aristocracy, oligarchies, they are all different. Whereas here democracy, people are the rulers. So when we say people, do all the people rule? So there are types. There are direct democracies, there are indirect democracies. So when we say direct democracy, okay, so people, they themselves vote on number of issues that matter, like on the laws, on the rules, on the policies. It is people who directly vote on them. So that we call direct democracy. So most parts of the world, we do not have such a direct democracy, except, you know, some cantons of Switzerland. In cantons of Switzerland, still people go and they vote on the laws, on the policies. They directly vote, they assemble. So there are some assemblies in these cantons of Switzerland. Of course, with smaller population, it is possible that they meet in this assembly hall, in those grounds, and by lifting of hands, etc., you know, they directly participate in deciding, making laws, rules of the land. Okay, in India, in local government, that too in rural local government, in Gram Sabha, it is possible. Okay, in your third tier, in the rural local government at Gram Sabha, so all those who are eligible to vote in that panchayat, they become part of Gram Sabha, and they all can assemble and they can wield with, of course, they do not directly make most important laws as such, but they decide on certain policies and their priorities, and their decisions are taken into consideration by the panchayat. So that's why Gram Sabha is somewhat like an embodiment of this direct democracy. You can say it's an example. You can say Gram Sabha. Okay, but mostly when we speak about countries and where they have what type of democratic countries, when we say, we are referring to representative democracy. So where people, they elect their representative. In India we are calling MP, or at the state level we are saying MLA or MLC. If they have a legislative council, it could be MLC as well. Of course, some of them are direct, some of them are through indirect elections. We'll come to that part. But MPs, okay, or these MLAs, MLCs are elected, so they are representatives, and these representatives on behalf of people, okay, they make the laws, they make the rules. Okay, so and from them you would see government forms. Whoever has majority, their government forms. So representative democracy is there when we speak about democratic countries. Okay, in direct democracies, because people directly, they are participating laws, and that's why you would see some of the instruments of direct democracy, some tools of direct democracy are also there. Like, for example, they can themselves initiate lawmaking, so like initiative we say. Or if it is a kind of a semi-direct democracy, if it is not completely direct or completely indirect, but a semi-direct where they do have some representative, but still they only make laws. So some kind of semi-direct if they have, so that person also can be recalled. So recall, or for any law if they want to initiate, like initiative. Okay, and they can also take decisions on important topics, on important questions through referendum, plebiscite. Like that also there are some direct tools in direct democracy, whereas in representative democracy, so your MP is taking decisions on your behalf. That's why you won't see such tools in indirect democracy, or what we are calling as representative democracy, or you can say indirect democracy. So he or she, they take decisions on behalf of the people in representative democracy. So in democracy, when we see democracy, you would understand that people, that they are decision makers, they wield supreme power. Of course, these representative can be changed whenever there are elections. They may, if they do not like their representative, they may change when there are elections. Okay, so it's about, it brings into question how people decide. And these are ordinary people. These are people like you, me, and whoever is there. You know, in India, we are the ones who are deciding. So we have the decision making power. So that is the virtue of democracy. When we speak about democracy, what is the virtue of democracy? What is it so good about democracy? It is just that people are deciding. And people have to be, we are exercising our intelligence, our decision making power in deciding who will be the person who rule us. So that is what democracy is about. There was a question which was asked in 2017. Democracy's superior virtue lies in the fact that, what is it calling into activity? What does democracy's superior virtue lie? In the fact that, what does it call into activity? Is it the intelligence and character of ordinary men and women? Or is it the methods for strengthening executive leadership? Is that what democracy is virtue? Does it lie in is it calling this into activity? Or a superior individual with a dynamism and vision? Is democracy superior virtue lying in the fact that, we have to elect one superior individual, a superman who is very dynamic and who has a great vision? Is that what democracy is about? Or is it about a band of dedicated party workers? No. This is not about electing one dynamic personality, dynamic leader who has a great vision. That is not the superior virtue of democracy. So it is not calling this into activity, nor is it asking for, we want a dedicated party workers, like the Communist Party of China, some workers, no, it's not about that. Is it about some methods for strengthening executive leadership? Why? What is the need for strengthening executive leadership? Is that what democracy calling into activity? Is that what? No. It is about intelligence and character of ordinary men and women. We are the decision makers, ordinary men and women. It is calling that. How are we exercising our decision? That is what democracy is asking. That is what it is calling into activity. That people, they exercise their decision making power, they go vote, they think wise and elect their leaders. That is what democracy is all about. A simple question, just by using your logic, you can answer these questions. And then let us come to understanding, when we use interchangeably so many times, country, nation and state, we use them interchangeably. Almost we think they are only synonyms. But let us know the differences. Let us know in a little bit stricter sense, let us know. When we use the word term country, we generally denote to, it's like a geographical term or like a political boundary. We are saying, whenever, let us say, I tell the country of, let us say, United States, US as a country, if I say, what should come to your mind? The geography of US, the boundaries of US. You must have seen US map many times. So that is what occurs to your mind when we say country. It is a region. So let us say if I am flying to Australia, I'd say that, I'm going to Australia. I'm going to that country, I would say. I don't use I'm going to Australian state. I don't say I'm going to Australian nation. I'm going to, which country are you visiting, you would say. Which country are you visiting for your vacation? I'm going to Australia. Or I'm going to France. So here I'm speaking about the country, I'm speaking about the boundaries, the geographical entity. That is what I'm speaking about when you use the term country. Then when should you use the term nation? Nation, generally the modern nation states, they are formed because nations as a concept, it emerged. You would see in Europe, when we speak about nation, nationality, it arose from the aspirations of people who belonged to same race, or people who had same language or same culture. So some homogeneous groups, they wanted to stay as one country. So people who had similarities, those all people formed one country. So when we use the word nation, nation is a territory where all the people, they have something in common. What do they have? They are either led by the same government. This is in a modern sense. They are led by the same government. Or nation, like India. Yes, we have one government. So we say, yes, Indian nation. I'm an Indian national. My nationality is Indian. That I can say. We have the same government. But when we speak about nation, how it evolved as a topic, you would see nation also denotes a people who have in common, or they believe that they have something in common, like maybe same customs, maybe same religion, language, or maybe their origins, ethnicity, race, ancestry, or their history. So even if they do not have a country of its own, some of them, they don't have a country of its own, but they believe them to be nationals of one country. For example, you must have heard of Kurds. Kurds consider themselves, that we want to, their aspiration is to have Kurdistan or Kurdistan, we say. So Kurds, so you'd see that, they are scattered in parts of, you would see some parts of, Iraq, you would see, and also parts of Syria and all. So they eventually, they want to have a country called Kurdistan, but they believe that, people who have the ethnicity, the language, the customs, the religion, these all something they have in common, ancestry or ethnicity. They think that we all need to be in one country ruled by one government. So they want one nationhood they want. So they consider themselves belonging to a particular nationality. Okay, but if they are recognized, of course you recognize them as various countries you recognize. But they themselves, they believe that they belong to something, they have something in common. So that is what we are saying, nation. So when we say nation, it is about people having in common something, or they are led by the common government, one government, or they have some common customs, religion, or they have they share this common religion, language, origins. You must have studied in your school days unification of Italy, unification of Germany. Why? Because they speak the same language, but they are scattered. They are in different countries ruled by different different rulers. So some people have fought to unite this nation as one nation they wanted to become. So they have fought wars, or they have made some agreements, and finally they have become one modern nation states they have become. Okay, in these unifications that you would see in Europe, you would be seeing. So the concept of nation is about people and that they have something in common. And then we come to state. I'm not speaking here about federated state. Federated state, or what we say, for example, Karnataka, Punjab, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh. Here I am speaking about federated units. They are units, they are called states, provinces, cantons. So these are all like federated units within a country. I am not speaking about that state. I am speaking generally the concept of a state. When we say it is a territory with its own institutions and population. It has four components. It has four important components a state has. So this is very important. You must remember in the previous PEP program also I mentioned this. I gave the distinction between country, nation, state. And in the last preliminary examination, the question was asked about state. They have also in the options given nation. So people who have clarity, what is a state? So they are able to easily write this. So when I say state, so especially when we say sovereign state, okay, so you should remember these four components. Permanent population. There is a permanent population. There is a defined territory is there. There is a defined territory. And there is one government. And also it has a sovereignty. It has, especially the external element of sovereignty is also there. Which means it is not just self-governing, which is internal element, but also external element of sovereignty. When I tell, it is about ability, its capacity to enter into foreign relations. So capacity to enter into foreign relations. So let us see, if India, are we a sovereign state? Yes, we are a sovereign state. So do we have permanent population? Yes. Do we have a defined territory of India? Yes, we have territory of India. It's defined. Do we have one government? Yes. So when I say one government, it is not as if, are there 2-3 governments fighting that which one is ruling that particular country? No. We have one government. The union government, that it is there. So there is no struggle for the throne, or there is no struggle for power. Whereas in some countries, there is no one government. There is no one government. There are various military factions, militias which are fighting to form government. So there is no one government. So they don't exactly fall under the definition of state. So to call them that they are definitely a state would be, it is very questionable. So after a lot of struggle, there was one unified government formed in Libya. But before that, there were many militias which have been fighting for power. So you would see that even in Yemen or Somalia, it is very difficult to say that there is one government which has complete authority. So yes, they are recognized. They are recognized by the United Nations and all, but you would see that the struggle for power and all. So, or until recently, you would see Afghanistan. So when Taliban was controlling some parts, the government was controlling some parts. So there is not like one government, two governments, and then eventually Taliban had overthrown, or they have occupied the entire territory of Afghanistan, and now Taliban rule is there. So yeah, we can say that the Taliban government is there. Okay, so does it have one government, or like there are many factions which are fighting to form government? Okay, so yeah, if they have one government, it's not like 2-3 governments, different parts are being ruled by different, and all of them are competing against each other. It's not like that. So they do have one government. And do they have sovereignty? Do they have the capacity to enter into foreign relations? Only if they have this part, we say yes, a sovereign state, we say. Otherwise, there are non-sovereign states also. For example, Hong Kong is there. Hong Kong or Scotland, Wales, these are non-sovereign states. So they don't have capacity. Hong Kong doesn't have capacity to enter into foreign relations on its own. You would see that it doesn't have that sovereignty element in it. So it doesn't come under sovereign state. Hong Kong cannot directly come and have foreign relations with India. It is China which determines what Hong Kong should enter into or not enter into. It is China which decides. That's why we don't say Hong Kong. Similarly, Wales or Scotland, they all come under United Kingdom. They are not sovereign countries as such. They are not sovereign states, non-sovereign states they are. Okay, so when we say sovereign state, it means an organized political institution, okay, which has these 4 aspects: permanent population, defined territory, one government, and capacity to enter into others, foreign relations or the relations with other states. Okay, so and that's why state we say is a territory with its own institutions and populations, its own population. It is not like only moving population. It's not like one island is there and it doesn't have any permanent population. Only visitors are coming and going, and if that you cannot call it as a state. Okay, and when we use state, when we use the term state, we should distinguish it from government. Sometimes we interchangeably use. Instead of using the word state, we are using the word government. Sometimes it may make sense, but we should differentiate also. When do we use government? When do we use state? See, when I say government, what is government? See, government is the organization, the machinery. It is, or you can say it is like an agency through which the political unit exercises its authority and performs functions. Governments perform functions. It administers the land. Okay, but it is that organization which does that part, and it has personnel, it has that machinery. So you can treat it like an organization through which the state performs functions. When I say state, these 4 should come to your mind. In that, one part is government. Remember, in a state, one part is government. Okay, so when we say India, so we also see when we say Indian government, instead of Indian government of India, there is nothing wrong if I say Narendra Modi government, because ours is a parliamentary form of government, a prime ministerial government. So we can use the Prime Minister's government, we can say the Narendra Modi government, or previously Manmohan Singh government we say. Okay, a cabinet form of government we may say. So we use like that. But is Narendra Modi government itself state? No. It is government of India, yes. But it is not Indian state. It is not equivalent to. So, when I say government of India, it is not equal to when we say Indian state. Okay. When we say Indian state, that is much more than government. Government is only one part. But you have to see the permanent population that is there. Okay. And their territory that is there, territory of India, and their capacity to enter into foreign relations, these are all there when we say sovereign state. Government is just one part. Governments may change. So, state, you would see that, the functions are performed, authority is exercised by an organization called government. Okay. And this government may change with elections. If it is a democracy, you are saying, if it is a democracy, not like a totalitarian state, an autocracy and dictatorship where the person may, sometimes they may be dictator for life and he may call my government. Not that government. Yeah, that is also a government. Okay, there may be a state. That also may be a state. So there may be a dictator, but that is also a state. Okay, for example, North Korea, does it fit under this definition? They have a permanent population, yes. They have a defined territory, yes. They have one government, yes. The Kim Jong's government is there, yes. Does it have capacity to enter into foreign relations? Yes. They need not depend upon anyone. So they have sovereignty. So they come under sovereign state. But are they democracy? No. They are not democracy. So you can be a sovereign state, you can be a state, but you need not be democratic. There may be authoritarian governments. And where it goes to the extent of no opposition, no other political parties, only, one person or few people rule, it may be an authoritarian government. And in that, the extreme may be totalitarian government, where government involves in everything, every other aspect it may involve. It may determine how many rights people will have, people will not have. So that type of government also may be there. Totalitarian state may be there. Okay. But in democracies, government may change. Once every 5 years, generally 5 years elections, if there are no midterm elections, so these governments may change. So you had Manmohan Singh government, Narendra Modi government, it may change. So governments may change, but state is permanent. Unless there is, some war or something, or it loses its territory or population. Otherwise, state is like permanent. Government may change in democracies. So you have to, that's why you should make a distinction between state and government. So government can change with elections. State, on the other hand, is political institution which has definite territory and sovereign people. Okay, the Indian state, the Sri Lankan state. So these are all like examples of when we say government. Okay, so it is only one part of the state. Sometimes, though we are using it interchangeably, when we use the word state, you should understand that we are speaking about the population territory as well. We are not speaking only about the government. That is how you need to understand. Federated state or a federated unit is different. It is also, the spelling is the same. State, S-T-A-T-E, spelling is the same. But here you are speaking about, a province, a canton, a state. It's a territorial and a constitutional community, that is a smaller part of a larger federation. It's a larger federation is there. Okay. A large country is there. In that one part, we are saying as a federated unit, like a state or a province or canton, Telangana, Karnataka, Punjab. These are all like states. They are units. Okay. So I hope you are able to see some differences when we are using. I hope your concept of state is clear. So when we use the word state, when we use the term government, when we use a country, when we use a nation. So remember, country like a geographical entity, like a political which has with boundaries. Like think of atlas, think of map when you use the word country. Which country are you traveling to? That's all. You won't say which nation are you traveling to. No, which country are you going to? Okay. But if you are getting citizenship, you are becoming part, Then you would say, which national are you? Means you are becoming a citizen, which nationality? What is your nationality? So are you a part of, are you being led by one government, same government? So you become a citizen of that particular country and thereby acquire nationality. National you become. So that is nation. Here you are speaking about people and what they have in common. Okay, and a state we have just now seen. So we need to make these differences we need to see. Okay. So in 2021 a question was asked, which one of the following best defines the term state? A community of persons permanently occupying a definite territory, independent of external control and possessing an organized government. See, very much seems like the definition we have seen. But look at the other options also. Directly let us not jump into only this option. Let us see the other options as well. A politically organized people of a definite territory and possessing an authority to govern them. See here, what is it? Possessing an authority to govern them. Do the people have an authority to govern them? Which means, is he speaking about democratic state? But here it is asking about state. I just now told you even North Korea is state. Then in North Korea, are there politically organized people who have authority to govern them? No. Maintain law and order, protect their natural rights and safeguard their means of sustenance. It looks very much like a welfare state which protects their rights, safeguards their means of sustenance. You care for the people. Does Kim Jong care for his people? I am not very sure. Okay. So safeguarding the means of sustenance, I very much doubt. So this looks like a definition of like a welfare state. It looks like, and a state which is which has rule proper where it has democracy, it has law and order, protecting the rights of people and all. Very much looks, but is that the definition of state? No. A number of persons who have been living in a definite territory for a very long time with their own culture, tradition and government. This option is again closer, but it is saying for a very long time. If people are living in one territory for a very long time with their own culture, tradition and government, very much close to the definition of state. But when you use the word that they have their own culture, their own tradition and government, is it not speaking about nation? It is closer to the definition of nation, where they have like one common culture, some common customs or traditions. It sounds like that, rather than speaking about like people who are permanently occupying in a definite territory, and of course they have some sovereignty and they have an organized government. This is closer to the definition of state, because see, the word that is used is best defines, because they also know that these are somewhat very closer to the definition of state, but they are saying what is the one which best decides. So this is also closer. So when aspirants, when they have appeared for the examination, they have seen the options, some of them got confused between A, B and C. So B, I told you, it is caring too much, so it's like a welfare state. But C, it is closer to the definition of nation than closer to the definition of state. Okay, yes, here also definite territory is there. People who are living for a long time, we are saying, so maybe like permanent population, but with their own culture, tradition and government, it seems like definition of nation than speaking about state. So a society, D, permanently living in a definite territory with a central authority and executive responsible to the central authority. So what is this central authority? Does he mean a legislature? And executive is responsible to the central authority and they have independent judiciary. But I told you, even North Korea is state. So when is the executive responsible to the central authority? Do we have like a party, like a communist party of China, and the authority is responsible to the Politburo, the central authority, is it like that? So it is not coming to near to the definition of state. So it doesn't necessarily, state doesn't necessarily have this executive being responsible to one central authority and having a complete independent judiciary. Nowhere the definition of state is not telling all that. You're going more than that. That's why this also is not a proper definition. So A and C are somewhat closer, even B is also coming closer, but this is closer to the definition of nation. Okay, and this is more about like a welfare state and rule of law, a democratic state. That is what it is speaking about. But A is somewhat closer to the option, though doesn't say sovereign state, but because you are saying that independent of external control, which means it is like it is free. Okay, it is not a dominion. It is independent of external control. So which means it is not a dominion. So it's dominion and all, then that is like becomes like a non-sovereign state. It doesn't qualify as a good definition of state. That's why if it's independent of any external control, it has got this capacity to enter into foreign relations, capacity, or they have that their freedom they have, sovereignty they have. So this is somewhat closer to the definition. So this is the one which best defines state. So making a distinction of what is state and how is it different from nation and country is also important. So see that this kind of questions are being asked. These are questions which are, these are topics which are there in your political science. From here some questions are being asked. And then let us come to constitution. When we say constitution, before even going into constitution, let us see what is the definition of constitution. What does constitution mean? And then how is constitution different from constitutionalism? What is the relation or what is the difference also? Let us see, because repeatedly questions have been asked. It has become sometimes UPSC becomes obsessed with few topics and they want to test the aspirants again and again with repetition on that topic or around that topic. Somewhere around that topic, very close by they ask, like constitutionalism they have been asking. So let us see, first let us see constitution. So when we say modern states are also like welfare states. So they care for the people, that, and it is understood that generally there should be a government with some powers and functions in modern states. So if there is a document which is like the fundamental law or supreme law of the land, a supreme law of the land, that becomes a constitution, but it also has laws, rules which determine and describe the form of the government. One is it has form of the government. Remember I told you what should be how the government formed, formation of government, and also the relationship between citizens and government. If they are also put in this document, generally it becomes constitution. So constitutions, it is a fundamental law of the land or supreme law of the land we say, and it is concerned with the two main aspects. One is, what is the relation between government and citizens? What is their relationship? Government and citizens, what is their relationship? That you will find in the constitution. And also, what are the different levels of government and formation with respect to the formation of government? Describe the form of the government. So the form of the government, it includes levels, the hierarchies, the structural form, the polity when we say organized form of government, this is polity. Organized form of government is polity. Okay, so what are the levels, what is the form, the structural part, the relationships, those all you will find in the form of government. The second aspect is relationship between government and citizens. This also generally you find in the constitution. So it has basic rules and regulations for the people and the government in the country to follow, and governments in the country follow constitution. Okay, so it also may have objectives of the state which it has to achieve. It's not necessary every constitution should have that, but when we speak about some of the modern constitutions and democracies, generally they have objectives of the state. You'll find them in the preamble. And also it provides for constitutional framework, that is, you have various structures, organs of the government. That's what I was telling here. Polity, the structure, the levels, the form of the government is mentioned. Along with that, the relationship between government and citizens. What type of relationship is there between government and citizens? Okay, so do citizens have any rights? Do they have any duties? These are also mentioned. And government, how much it can encroach the powers and how much it must not. These are all mentioned in the constitution, not necessarily in every constitution, but those which we are speaking about a constitutional government. If you are going to constitutionalism, that is what comes. Okay, so therefore it is considered as a basis of governance of the country, both in terms of goals and objectives as well as their structure and functions. That is what constitution is about. Okay, remember, fundamental law of the land, supreme law of the land, and it tells the polity part, the form of the government, the levels, the structural part that it tells. At the same time, relationship between government and citizens also it tells. Okay, so then comes constitutionalism, or when we say the word like constitutional government or constitutionalism, what does it mean? See, modern political thought, it makes a clear distinction between just a constitution and constitutionalism. Even where there is a dictatorship, there may be constitution. Maybe he has only written a supreme law of the land and is telling this is how the government is formed. What should be there in constitution? It is a supreme law of the land. It tells the relation between government and citizens. And it's also telling the form of government, like the polity, the structural part, the hierarchy, the levels. These are all told. So a dictator may also frame them and say that, this is a totalitarian state. Maybe like totalitarian state, where he says, everything, government has everything and citizens, they don't have much. Or maybe some of them are only voting, but after voting it's a complete totalitarian state. Maybe it's only one political party. And citizens' participation is very minimal in the government. An authoritarian state it may be. Or completely the government only controls everything and citizens have minimal or nothing to have a say in that, then it is a totalitarian state. Or it may be dictatorship. They also may have constitutions, but that is they may frame their own rules and regulations. They may say that whatever I say is the supreme law of the land. And they may have a certain hierarchy, they may have, and they may say this is the constitution. But such constitutions are not necessarily constitutional governments. Because when I say constitutional government, which means they have constitutionalism. So a country may have constitution, but not necessarily constitutionalism. Means like I told you, dictatorship, where dictator's word is law. Dictator is saying whatever I say is law. Earlier the kings, the queens, monarchs, they have made laws. They said that whatever I say, whatever comes from my mouth is law. But it is not constitutionalism. It is only maybe they have a constitution. A very bad constitution, in my opinion, but it is a constitution, but not constitutionalism. But when we say constitutionalism, it recognizes the need for government to be limited. Government should be limited. There are limitations placed upon governmental powers. If there are some limitations placed on governmental powers, then only we say constitutionalism. Which means the limitations may be in the form of giving some rights to people. People enjoy certain rights, and those rights are limiting the power of government. then we say it is constitutionalism. And these are mentioned in the Constitution itself. In the Constitution itself, what are the limitations? Maybe in the form of rights. For example, in Indian Constitution, we speak about fundamental rights. There are also other limitations on the government which it cannot encroach, it cannot step out of those boundaries. So that is constitutionalism. Means government is not all powerful. Government cannot do absolutely what it has. So there is no absolutism, absolute power. It corrupts absolutely. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So in constitutionalism, such absolutism is removed. So it checks and balances are placed on the powers of the legislature and the executive under some restraints, and not making them uncontrolled and arbitrary. Government should not become, legislature and executive, they should not become uncontrolled. Means whatever we want, we will do laws. We can make any law. No, there are limitations. Who is placing limitations? If your constitution is placing limitations on the government, maybe on the legislature, you can't make arbitrary laws. Can there be a law made? All those who are preparing for civil services examination, they should, they will all be put in for imprisonment for 2 months, and then only will be allowed to write examination. Can they make such a law? You would say, what kind of law is that? That's very arbitrary, uncontrolled. Can Parliament make such legislations? No, not in India. Why? We have constitutionalism. Our government is a constitutional government, means it is a limited government. Constitution is limiting the powers of government, of legislature, even executive. Can executive give any orders? Prime Minister may be the most powerful person, yes, but if Prime Minister, let us say Prime Minister is passing on the road and you are going on the road, let us say all of them are hailed the Prime Minister, and you forgot to, you didn't feel like speaking praise of the Prime Minister. I'm just giving an example of Prime Minister, not that I have thinking about the Prime Minister, or it may be Chief Minister in the state. So Chief Minister or Prime Minister, let us say you did not wish, or you did not praise, or you didn't sing paeans of praise and hymns, you did not sing, and you are just saying, you are not criticized. Yes, you said you are going in your way. The person, the Prime Minister or Chief Minister did not like you. Can they immediately order you for imprisonment? Can they behead you? If it was a king, if it was a monarch, if he's a dictator, he can do what he wants. He can behead, he can just ask his soldiers, go and behead him. I just don't like. This is my constitution, he may say. This is my rule, this is my law. But that is not constitutionalism. Constitutionalism, limitations are there on government. Executive cannot act as he wishes. He cannot go in an uncontrolled fashion. He cannot do anything arbitrarily. So, legislature, there are checks. Executive, there are checks. Where are these checks placed? Where are these checks and balances placed? If they are placed in the constitution itself, suppose they are put in the constitution itself, then we say there is constitutionalism. Then we say that is a constitutional government. I hope you are understanding what is constitutionalism or constitutional government. That there are limitations on government. Government is not absolute power. No. Legislature, executive are not absolute. There are limitations. They have to work within the frame of constitution. They are not uncontrolled. They are not absolute. They are cannot take arbitrary decisions. They cannot make arbitrary laws. That is constitutionalism. Why does a country need constitution? One, we have seen that generally in even democratic societies, constitutionalism is important. Limitations are important. So why? Because if the constitution is safeguarding against the misuse of power by political leaders, by limiting the powers of government, means if the constitution has the constitutionalism aspect, It's not a bad constitution, but a constitution like in India, there are limitations placed on the government. Then it is acting like a safeguard. They are safeguarding you against the misuse of power, arbitrary use of power, abuse of power. These are all being stopped. They are, this constitution is safeguarding. It's guarding you against these. For that we need constitution. Also, it also ensures that dominant group does not use its power against less powerful groups or other groups, on minorities, for example. Not necessarily religious minorities. It can be linguistic minorities, ethnic minorities, or any sort of minorities. Generally there are numerically dominant group or powerful groups. Some of them are numerically dominant. Some of them are closer to power or in power. It may be religious groups, linguistic groups, caste groups, ethnic groups, any group. Just because more numbers are there, it is not just numbers. Does it mean that minority groups, maybe a linguistic minority, maybe an ethnic minority, should they not have their own freedoms? Should they not also be in India like any other group? Yes, we can be. So that is how dominant groups should not say that, our way is the highway. If you want to remain in India, you should be like this. No. Constitution is giving liberties, freedoms it gives. Constitution also says, we are a secular country. Religion, your wish. Whichever religion you want to profess, practice, propagate. It's all up to you. That is a secular country we are. At the same time, no non-discrimination on the basis of race, religion, caste, sex, place of birth. See, which means that, any dominant group with one social identity, they should not dominate or they should not misuse their power against the lesser groups or less powerful groups or numerically lesser group, numerically not so larger groups. So that's why Constitution is giving those safeguards as well. At the same time, Constitution also helps to protect against certain decisions that are taken in the short term, but which may have adverse effect in the long term, or the larger principles of the country may be affected. So such decisions should not be taken. Okay, in the short term, see, sometimes you are angry and you say some things, you say your parents or friends, just because you're in a fit of rage, you say something or you do some action which may be detrimental to you and to your near and dear ones, but the words have slipped your tongue. It is very difficult to take them back. It causes long-term damage, and then you say, it is not my intention to tell you that, somehow it rolled out of my tongue, my brain. These things you may say, but they will cause damage. They already may have caused damage for your relationship or for your any prospects. So a country only looking at the short-term goals, or in a fit of rage or passion, just on that moment, we should not take decisions which will affect the larger principles that the country believes in. What does our country believe in? What are our goals? What are our objectives? We'll find them in the preamble. Liberty, equality, fraternity, justice. This is what we believe in. These are our objectives. We should not do anything detrimental which have, to these principles, certain principles. Okay, so that's why any short-term decisions, any short-term laws, so just because Parliament can make laws, no, they cannot make any law as they wish, which affects the objectives which are enshrined in our Constitution, especially preamble. So that's why that also Constitution, there is a Constitution, there are certain principles, especially if they are there in the basic structure. Even legislature with all its majority also cannot change them if they are there in the basic structure. So we'll come to that part as well. So I hope you are getting an idea why Does a country need constitution, especially like a constitutional government? Not a constitution where dictator decides, not that type of constitution, but which has constitutionalism. Okay, so you are seeing that safeguard against misuse of power by the power elite, the ruling persons, the political leaders. So they should not misuse democracy. The political leaders or bureaucrats or whoever is in government, they should not misuse powers. Same time, dominant numerically or powerful groups, they should not misuse their power. At the same time, decisions, laws with short-term interests affecting the long-term interests or larger principles the country believes in, they should not be affected. For all these, we need constitution. Okay, so having seen what constitutionalism is, now I think you can answer this question, very easy question. A constitutional government by definition, what it is. In 2020, this question was asked. What does a constitutional government mean? Means they are asking about a government which is run as per constitution. Means constitutional, when I say it is like constitutionalism it has. What is the answer? Is it government by legislature? Is that constitutional government? No. Is it popular government? Popular means like people's government. Is it that? No. Is it a multi-party government? Yes, there can be number of parties in a democratic government. Yeah, that is one. But is it by definition, does that mean? No. Is it limited government? Yes. That the government is limited. Government doesn't have absolute powers. That is important. Paper setters were not just happy asking once in 2020. They again have come up in 2021. In 2021, again, see, constitutional government means, see, again they have asked. And the options, they have changed a bit, that's all. Does a constitutional government mean a representative government of a nation with federal structure? Not necessarily. Is it a government whose head enjoys nominal powers? May enjoy nominal powers, okay, that may be there, but that is not the exact meaning. A government whose head enjoys real powers, yeah, it may be such, there may be such government, but that is not the definition. So here they are saying constitutional government, what does it mean? Again, a government limited by the terms of constitution itself. Yes, constitution is limiting the powers of government. See, repeated, question got repeated. Rarely questions get repeated. And if UPSC questions are getting repeated like this, which means that, see, they want to ingrain the topic into your heads. They want to see that, somehow they want you to understand that just by reading some Lakshmikant book, we have read all the articles. Not enough. They are asking, do you know what is constitutional government? Do you know what constitutionalism is? So they are going into the basics. Even before you start off reading the Constitution, Article 1, 2, 3, no, wait. Go back, see what is the basics. Why did we have a constitution? What is the need for constitution? What is the meaning of constitutionalism? That is what they are asking here. So I hope you have understood how important this topic of constitutionalism is. Okay. So yes, various countries have various constitutions. Okay, United States is considered, American Constitution is considered the oldest constitution in the world. Okay, way back in 1780s, 1787 they have written, ratified, later came into force in 1789. So old their constitution, written constitution is. Australian constitution almost, this also old, 1900. Relatively, our constitution is younger. Compared to some of the constitutions, our constitution is younger. Okay. And when we speak about constitutions, there are two types of constitutions. You have written constitution, unwritten constitutions. Written are also called as codified constitution. And there are also unwritten constitutions or uncodified constitutions. What is the difference? For India, United States, we have codified constitution, we have a written constitution, whereas for countries like UK, Israel, New Zealand, they have unwritten constitutions. They have constitution, yes, but unwritten. Unwritten means not equivalent to not written. Not like that. Unwritten means uncodified. What does it mean? See, when I say constitution is written or codified, so which means that it is written in the form of a document, one single document, one book, one single document in which you have all the constitutional law is there in it. So that is what we call by a written constitution. When I say written constitution, it is the one which is written down or codified in the form of a one document, one constitutional document is there. Okay, so unwritten constitution or uncodified constitution, where the constitutional laws, the fundamental rules, they are not there in one single document, they are not there in one single book. Okay, they are in the different forms. They are there. They may be in the form of statutes, they may be in the form of customs, usages, precedents, and a variety of statutes. Statute means legislations, acts, and legal instruments. Various forms are there. They are not there in one codified. They are not codified and put that. So if you go and ask in UK, give me your constitution book. Oh, no, we don't have one document. It is uncodified. We didn't codify them into one document. Why? See, our constitution has evolved. It has evolved. So there may be some judgments. So so in the form of common law. It is said that Magna Carta was the starting way back in 1215 AD. That they regard as like their first form of kind of constitution. So there are various laws are there. So there is not much of difference between the ordinary laws and constitutional laws. There is not much difference. So their constitution is in the form of some legislations are there, some usages are there, several statutes are there. Okay, some principles, some court decisions are there, some common law principles are there. Courts have given judgments that also have become like their constitution. So some conventions, usages, some practices they have been following from 300 years, from 400 years. Like a convention it has become, a custom it has become. So that is how their UK constitution is. That's why we say it is unwritten or uncodified, because they are not there in one comprehensive document. They don't have one comprehensive document. That kind of constitutions we call as unwritten constitution or uncodified constitution. Simple. Written constitution, there is one single document codified. All the constitutional law is codified in one document, and that is constitution. American constitution, you go, you ask, you get American constitution book. It's codified. Indian constitution, yes, this is Indian constitution. UK constitution, no, there is not there in one place. That is also constitution. This law is also, that custom is there, no, that is also our constitution. Yeah, that precedent we have been following from 300 years, that is also our constitution. So like that, they are all scattered. They are interspersed in several statutes are there, acts are there, some of principles are there, some court decisions, like that they are there. Not in one document. That is unwritten constitution. Okay. So in Britain we speak about sovereignty of parliament. Parliamentary sovereignty in Britain. Okay. In British constitution, that is the underlying principle. Parliamentary sovereignty. Parliamentary supremacy. Parliament is supreme. It can do anything except making a man to a woman, woman to a man. Like that, there is a saying in Britain that British Parliament is capable of doing anything. Parliamentary supremacy. Parliament is supreme. Judiciary's role becomes limited. Because if you have constitution, then judiciary also interprets constitution if there is a written constitution. Or judiciary role somewhat becomes limited if it is unwritten constitution like British constitution, the UK constitution we are speaking about. Because parliament is supreme. Parliament can do anything. It can make a law. Tomorrow it can sit and it can make a law and say that this is also like a constitutional law. In India, there are procedures. It's not easy to bring a constitutional amendment. It's not easy. So this is where you see difference. Parliamentary supremacy, parliamentary sovereignty. In India, we don't call parliamentary supremacy. We say constitutional supremacy. Compared to this, in India, constitutional supremacy. Not parliamentary supremacy. Parliament is also, yes, it is also formed by the constitution itself. So that is how we see. But in Britain, parliamentary sovereignty, parliamentary supremacy. Parliament is supreme. It can make and break their constitution any day. It can change their constitution any day. But same is not the case in India. So that's why there is a difference in written constitutions, unwritten constitutions. Okay, in written constitution, like in India, like in the US, so India or the US, written constitution, the document, one comprehensive document is there. That will be the formal source of constitutional law in the country. That will be the source of law in all the constitutional law in the country. So it is regarded as supreme or fundamental law of the land, and it controls all the institutions in the country. It permeates all the organs of the country. So each and every organ in the country must act in accordance with the constitution only. Any organization, any organ, any agency in the country, we are all bound by constitution. It may be the government and its agencies, it may be the organizations, it may be the machinery of government. So they are all bound by the constitution. Constitution is supreme. So constitution is supreme law of the land. So government, other organizations and all of them, they have to follow the constitution. Even parliament runs as accordance with the constitution. Parliament is not above the constitution. It may be government, it may be legislature, executive, judiciary, all of them must act in accordance with the constitution only. That is in India. That's why you are saying this is a fundamental law of the land. It controls and permeates each institution in the country. That is what written constitutions do. India, US and most other countries, they do have written constitutions, but countries like New Zealand, UK, Israel, they have like uncodified constitution. They're in different laws, customs, precedents, like that there. Okay, so this is Constitution of India. Okay, so Constitution of India. Let us look at important aspects of making of a constitution. Before making of the constitution, there were legislations brought by East India Company and also British government which had ruled over India. They are in the form of your regulating acts, charter acts, councils, Government of India Act. These all acts are there, but I am not teaching you all of them. That you should be studying only after studying history. So without having knowledge about history, what happened in the corresponding period, in the 1770s, what had happened? After 1857, what had happened? In 1909, in 1919, so there were corresponding movements for freedom in the freedom struggle. So you should know about the first war of independence, the Sepoy Mutiny, and afterwards what was British policy, and then you should correspondingly read that. And you should know how British were trying to regulate East India Company's affairs. Various charters, how they were brought, you should be looking at. And you should be also be looking at the important movements of a Vande Mataram movement. That is, when we speak about the partition of Bengal, so anti-partition, movement and how these Minto-Morley reforms were brought. And then Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, non-cooperation movement. So these were corresponding events in history that have occurred. So that's why you study them, though they may be there in your Lakshmikant book, but study them only after studying history, then you go back, then you get an idea. So I'm not teaching them right now. So after history, you go back, come and see those acts, then you get an idea. Okay. So we only go about what are the most likely topics that can be asked in the preliminary examination. We are not dealing with the topics which come for the main examination. Only with preliminary examination we are going to deal topics with. So there may be some facts and figures that might appear. So likelihood of appearance in the preliminary examination, that becomes the key as to why they are included in presentation. So when we come to making of the Constitution of India, the first demand that Indians, we ourselves will determine our fate, that the Constitution of India should be made by Indians ourselves, was made by Mahatma Gandhi. Then there were some efforts made by Motilal Nehru by bringing about a Nehru report, but which did not go ahead. Of course, Britishers were reluctant to give any sort of freedom to determine our own policies, only piecemeal approach. Some pacifiers were given by including some of these members into the council that advises the Governor General. So governors' councils, Governor General's council, like that they have added some Indians, and that pacified the moderates. That's all. But they did not take any measures that would have resulted in independence of India and Indians themselves drawing their constitution. In fact, you need a Constituent Assembly to prepare a constitution. What is a Constituent Assembly? It is a body or assembly of persons who are generally popularly elected representatives. There should be people who are elected from the people. Okay, so such representatives should prepare, draft and adopt the constitution. So that body becomes your Constituent Assembly, which prepares constitution. Now, this idea that a Constituent Assembly must be first be there to prepare constitution. So this idea was for India was put forth first by a great son of Mother India, Manavendranath Roy. Okay, so he was earlier attracted towards communism and later he went towards humanism, M.N. Roy. So in 1934 he had made this proposal. So there are just some facts chronologically we are seeing. So in 1935 Indian National Congress, it said that yes, there should be a Constituent Assembly to frame the constitution for India, like that Indian National Congress had demanded. Of course, Britishers were not going to relent so easily and give. In 1938, on behalf of Indian National Congress, Jawaharlal Nehru, he declared that if our constitution of a free India must be framed without any interference from British, and it should be on the basis of adult franchise elections. So there should be an elected body of Constituent Assembly, and this on the basis of adult franchise, people of eligible age should go vote and they should elect their leaders, and those members of Constituent Assembly will prepare constitution, and this should happen without the outside interference, means without British interference, like that Jawaharlal Nehru demanded. In 1940, after the Second World War broke out, and now the British realized that they need support of their largest colony, but in their largest colony, India, there was freedom struggle. At its peak it was going on, so they wanted support. They wanted more soldiers to enlist into the war efforts the British were making in fighting Hitler. So the German forces were occupying with blitzkrieg. Their war efforts have expanded all over Europe. They were occupying France. So British, they realized that we need the support of our colonies and more soldiers need to enlist. So that's why they realized that in a way to pacify Indians and to make the freedom fighters tone down and support their war efforts against a bigger evil, Hitler. So August offer was made by Lord Linlithgow at that time, and British government accepted the demand in principle. What demand? That yes, you need a Constituent Assembly. In 1940 they said yes, you need a Constituent Assembly. In principle only they have accepted. Only in principle. It is not as if, we are now forming a Constituent Assembly for you. Not like that. In principle. What is in principle? Sometimes you may go to your parents and you are saying, Dad, I need a bike. I need a new bike, or I need a new laptop, or I need a new mobile. You've gone and you asked. So maybe your dad, see, I need to go to somewhere to the institute. I need to study. And that's why I need a bike. So your father may have said, yes, I agree that you need a bike. I agree. Means in principle he has accepted. He has not said that, no, now I'm going and buying it and giving it to you. No. In principle, yes, I agree. You need a bike. Yes, I agree. In principle, I'm agreeing. That doesn't mean that, immediately he would buy. Similarly, British also government, cleverly, they said that, yes, in principle, we agree. But are you taking steps immediately to form a Constituent Assembly? No. But when the war intensified and Britishers have realized that the war came to their doorstep, and here Quit India movement was going on. So Britishers, they made an effort by sending Sir Stafford Cripps in 1942. He was a member of a British cabinet. He was sent with a draft proposal that how the framing of independent constitution to be adopted after Second World War. We shall see after Second World War, but how it should be adopted and all. This person, Sir Stafford Cripps, he will come up with a proposal. But of course, there were issues with the Cripps proposals. It was not admissible, agreeable to various sections. Nobody were happy with the Cripps proposal. Especially they were rejected by Muslim League, because Muslim League was already demanding that we need a separate Constituent Assembly, and if you are giving India a Constituent Assembly, then it should be 2 Constituent Assemblies and 2 states it must be divided into. So they were asking for a separate Pakistan. Okay, so in 1946, after the Second World War, in 1945 the Second World War ended. Britain is no longer the big brother of the world. It is no longer the superpower of the world. United States had emerged as like the superpower after your Second World War. And after a long drawn war, Britain has realized it is time. Of course, it's not just that the British had given, it's because of the long drawn freedom struggle. Our freedom fighters, we are speaking about even all the sections of the people, and masses have also enrolled into the freedom fight thanks to the efforts of Mahatma Gandhi. So because of this, finally British have relented, and they said that okay, we would send a 3-member commission called Cabinet Mission. Cripps, who was earlier part of a mission, he was again part of this Cabinet Mission. So along with Sir Stafford Cripps, there was also A.V. Alexander and Lord Pethick Lawrence also. So 3 members were sent to India, and these 3 cabinet ministers, so they had come up with a proposal as to how a Constituent Assembly must be formed. So this is called as Cabinet Mission Plan. And they also did not agree to the 2 Constituent Assemblies. They did not agree. So they said that, somehow we will bring up a scheme which will fit some of your needs. Like that, they pacified Muslim League. So by having a separate electorate, and somehow, this 2 Constituent Assemblies idea was rejected. So anyways, So this is cabinet mission plan. They came up with a scheme. As per, let us see what that scheme is. So how the Constituent Assembly would be formed, what would be the composition. Okay, so they made a plan, cabinet mission plan it is called as. So, and this Constituent Assembly was finally constituted in 1946. But how it was formed? So there have to be elections conducted, but you should understand that there were also princely states. There were princely rulers who had signed subsidiary alliance under the British. So these Rajas, Maharajas, Nawabs and these people, these princely rulers, they were somewhat reluctant. They would not agree to such elections. So, but in other parts there would be elections. So how should that elections happen to the Constituent Assembly? They said that there should be seats allocated. So remember, this was undivided India. Partition did not happen at that time in 1946. So for every 1 million population, there would be one seat. So 10 lakh population, there would be one seat in the Constituent Assembly. And seats are allocated in these British provinces, not in the princely states. In the princely states, there would not be elections. The representative of princely states are nominated by those princely rulers. So the Nawabs, the kings, they had actually nominated their representatives to sit in the Constituent Assembly. So if this is the Constituent Assembly, then some part of the Constituent Assembly, this part is elected. And whereas some seats in the Constituent Assembly, so these seats are nominated by princely rulers. So these princely states, the rulers, they nominated their representatives and they sent. They did not go for elections in their princely states. So that's why our Constituent Assembly is partly elected, partly nominated. Though Jawaharlal Nehru said that, it should be on the basis of, it should be an elected body based on adult franchise, but it is not completely an elected body, Constituent Assembly. So and in the elections, let us see with respect to elections also. So there were also separate electorate for Muslims, for Sikhs, and general category was also there in proportion to their population. Seats have been allocated as per separate electorate, which means separate electorate where Muslims could vote for the Muslim candidates. So Sikhs could vote for Sikh candidate, and then there was a general electorate as well. Okay, and how would this election happen? Who elects them? Was it all the people on the basis of adult franchise? Was it conducted at that time? No. It was not a directly elected body. So in elections, now we are speaking about, let us say this is a Constituent Assembly and there are people in Constituent Assembly. How are they getting elected? Are people electing them directly? Were people electing them directly? No, people were not electing them directly. Rather, just like how you elect your Rajya Sabha members, are you going and voting for your Rajya Sabha MPs? No. Who elect your Rajya Sabha MPs? It is your MLAs who elect your Rajya Sabha MPs. Similarly, you are saying members of Legislative Assembly, isn't it? Members of Legislative Assembly are electing your Rajya Sabha MPs. Indirect election. Similarly, at that time also, the members of a Constituent Assembly, were not directly elected by people, but there were no states. It was various provinces were there. Various provinces were there. Like for example, take Madras province. Okay, Madras province or Bombay presidency. So like provinces were there. So any of these provinces, they had legislative assemblies. So there were legislative assembly. So there were members to this provincial legislative assembly. Let us take for example this Madras. So just like your MLAs. So at that time we don't say state legislative assembly. At that time provincial legislative assembly. So people in Madras province, they elect their provincial legislative assembly members like MLAs, and they in turn would elect these constituent assembly members. I hope you're getting it. I hope you are understanding how this is an indirect election. It was not as if people directly elected their constituent assembly members, but it was members of your provincial legislative assembly. So those members have elected these constituent assembly members. So it was an indirect election. I hope you are understanding it. Just like today how we elect our Rajya Sabha MPs. And the type of voting method also is proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. Okay, this what is this method and how is it different? We'll see that later. So we realize that Constituent Assembly, is it completely elected body? No, there were also nominated. So partly elected, partly nominated. This is by princely states. Princely states nominated. And also in the elected also, is it direct election? No, it is indirect election. So who had elected them? Members of provincial assemblies. Okay, provincial assemblies elected. And so you are saying, sir, what about then this provincial, you said Madras Provincial Legislative Assembly. Okay, example I am giving you here. So sir, was there universal adult franchise? Did people, all the people, did they elect their provincial legislative assembly members? No, it was not an universal adult franchise. It was a limited franchise. So not all people could vote for the Madras Provincial Legislative Assembly. Not all of them could vote. They, in fact, okay, some people were left out. So people, there were various laws at that time as per the British scheme. For those provinces, the people who were educated, people who had property, people who were paying taxes. So there was a category of people who only could vote. Not everyone was included to vote. So it is not a universal adult franchise, it was a limited franchise. So it means our Constituent Assembly is partly elected, partly nominated, and also indirectly elected by members of Provincial Legislative Assembly who themselves are elected by limited franchise, not universal adult franchise. So keep this in mind. Okay, but however, does it mean that it was not representative? No. Though it was not directly elected by the people, though it was not universal adult franchise, it was only limited franchise, still the assembly was very representative in character. It had people belonging to various sections of Indian society. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Parsis, Anglo-Indians, Indian Christians, SCs, STs, women, all these members, at least 2 members from various religious communities, at least 2 members were there in the Constituent Assembly. So that's why though it is a limit, though it was an indirect election, still it was very representative in character because most of the seats were won by Indian National Congress, and Indian National Congress at that time itself was very representative, where people of various religions, various communities, all of them were there within Indian National Congress, and when they stood for elections, that's why they have won majority of the seats in the Constituent Assembly. That's why it was very representative in character. Of course, Mahatma Gandhi, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, they did not participate in these elections too. They didn't want to get into the Constituent Assembly, but there were many followers of Mahatma Gandhi who made it into the Constituent Assembly as Constituent Assembly members. So this was the Constituent Assembly of that time. And what is the task of this Constituent Assembly? They have to prepare now Constitution. They have to make the Constitution. So if you see the timeline of the working, this to prepare the Constitution of India. So for the formation of this Constituent Assembly was formed now. Some elected, some nominated, you have seen. So for the first time, okay, so they have met on 9th December 1946. Okay, that was the first meeting that had happened of this Constituent Assembly in the Constitution Hall. Now in the Parliament we have Central Hall. So there they have met. Okay, and see, when there should be someone presiding over this Constituent Assembly. So temporarily, okay, before that, what happened was, in accordance with a French practice in France, how a temporary president is elected based on who is the oldest member. So at that time, Dr. Sachidananda Sinha, so he was the oldest member of the Constituent Assembly. Amongst those members, he was the oldest member. So that's why, he was made the first president. He was made the first president, but it was a temporary nature until they elect a president for this Constituent Assembly. President, presiding officer, is the one who presides that Constituent Assembly and sets things in order. Okay, so it was first Dr. Sachidananda Sinha. So why Sachidananda? He was the oldest member. So that is a French practice whenever the first temporary president based on his age. So oldest member. Then elections were conducted for the president. So now you want president should be elected. So amongst the members, they can stand for elections. Who wants to be the president? So then a president was elected. You can say it's elected president. So Dr. Rajendra Prasad. And you also had the vice chairman was there, H.C. Mukherjee. And there was a constitutional legal advisor also, B.N. Rao. So he was there, but Rajendra Prasad importantly had become the president of this Constituent Assembly. And you would see that on 13th December, see these were all happening in 1946 in the month of December. So on 13th December, Jawaharlal Nehru, so he proposed objectives resolution. This is very important. So what should be the fundamental underlying principles based on which our constitution should be formed? What should be the underlying principles? There must be some principles to prepare constitution. So what should be those principles? So for that, objectives resolution was proposed by Jawaharlal Nehru, and this was unanimously accepted on 22nd Jan 1947. So it was accepted, and then they went on. Within a short span, okay, the Mountbatten Plan came into action. Partition had to happen, and India was gaining independence. So we need a flag. So the Constituent Assembly which formed, so one of its tasks was on 22nd July 1947, national flag, the tricolor. Okay, so who was the one who had designed this tricolor? Pingali Venkaiah. So that tricolor national flag was adopted by the Constituent Assembly. It has adopted, ratified. Yes, this is the flag which will be our national flag. See, national symbols, national identity elements are important. So you should know what are these. You should know a little more, not just knowing them. So who had made it, or who is the author? Sometimes if they, like for example, national anthem, so national song, okay, or other elements. So when we have a national bird, national emblem, so who are the one who proposed them, or who are the one who first to sing them, okay, or who is the author? These all you better know. Okay, so then we have independence. So India was split into two dominions, Dominion of India and Dominion of Pakistan. At that time, remember, constitution did not come into force. Constitution task was going on. Parallelly, constitution task was going on. So Constituent Assembly was preparing constitution, but it takes time. It is not so easy. We're a vast country, so it takes time to prepare constitution. So it was going on. Meanwhile, we got freedom, we got independence. So now, once we have independence, so there were changes brought in by the Independence Act 1947. So with this Constituent Assembly, which main task is to prepare constitution, but now it got a second task. That is, it also became a legislative body. Means it became the first parliament. It became like a dominion legislature, or it became the first parliament of free India. This became the parliament. But remember, at that time there were no Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha as such. It was only Constituent Assembly which was acting like the parliament, like for a provisional period. Okay, so two separate functions now it has. One is making of constitution, that is one task. The second is also ordinary laws for the land. One is constitutional law, and the other is laws that are normally followed, which the state makes. See, the state should follow constitutional law, but state also can make laws like ordinary laws of the land, the other laws of the land, maybe civil laws, criminal laws, number of laws are there. So who should prepare those laws? Who should amend those laws? That is all that should be done by, generally by a legislative body, which is like parliament. But at that time you didn't have parliament, because what type of parliament you need? Whether it should be parliament or something else? How many? Should it be unicameral or bicameral? Who says? They are all there in the constitution, but constitution itself is not prepared. So at that time, constitution is not prepared. So that's why the Constituent Assembly itself was doing a second task of preparing ordinary laws of the land, because there is no parliament yet. Okay, so these two tasks were performed on two separate days. So on one day, if they had decided to prepare constitution, the other day they were passing ordinary laws. Okay, so whenever they met as a constituent body to prepare constitution, whenever they were meeting, so who presided? It was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. He was chairing it. But when they met for making ordinary laws for the land, like a legislative body, when they met, it was chaired by Ganesh Vasudev Maulankar. Okay, who was like the first speaker. He was like the first speaker of the first parliament of a free India, G.V. Maulankar. Okay, and so it started way, you are seeing the first meeting started with the 9th December 1946. It continued till November 26th, 1949. Okay, so yes, it had taken almost 3 years it had taken to complete this task of making the constitution. So it also performed some other tasks. Okay, so Commonwealth membership was ratified by Constituent Assembly. So these are all tasks performed by Constituent Assembly. It ratified, yes, we will be a member of the Commonwealth. Commonwealth are the erstwhile territories over which British ruled. So you see, even Australia, Canada, they are all part of Commonwealth. So that membership was ratified by Constituent Assembly. It adopted the national flag, I told you. It adopted the national anthem 2 days just before the constitution came into force. So just before that, national anthem. Okay, so national anthem, go read a little more about national anthem, because something related around it, questions can be asked. So last prelims a question was asked. Of course, you can put it in history, but it is national anthem. So out of your interest, if you go and study a little more about the national anthem. So which of the following events had happened at Madanapalli, like that, the question was asked. Okay, so it was Rabindranath Tagore who had translated the national anthem into English. So that happened at Madanapalli. So go read a little about national anthem. So go read. So it is national anthem, the one which we have adopted as national anthem, Jana Gana Mana, you would see. It is just the first stanza of Bharata Bhagya Vidata. Okay, so Bharata Bhagya Vidata, it has written by Rabindranath Tagore. So it has 5 stanzas. In that only first stanza, we have adopted as national anthem. So it is, so we have not taken all the 5 stanzas, only the first stanza we have taken. So go read, find out a little, do a little Google search about Bharata Bhagya Vidhata. And when was it first sung? Who was the person who first sang it? So, of course, this is to do with going into history a little, but I am just giving you an idea, because you should know your national anthem, not just knowing what text is there. Know a little, that translate it into English. Why don't you see? You have been singing the Bengali version. You have been singing. Okay, so why don't you look at the English translation also of national anthem and understand national anthem? You have been singing, but maybe you don't understand the meaning. So why don't you do it? Okay, next, national song. What is our national song? Vande Mataram. Okay, so who has written it? Go read a little more history about it. Somewhere question may be asked. Okay, I'm just telling you, see how a question from history might come. Okay, it's not necessarily history as such, but trying to know your national anthem, national song, a little more about it. If you search, you may find interesting details. Okay, and Constituent Assembly not only adopting flag, anthem and national song, but also then it elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the first president of India, because Constitution was coming into force on Jan 26th, 1950, and Constitution says there shall be a president of India. Okay, then who should be the president? So, first president was Dr. Rajendra Prasad, who was also the president of Constituent Assembly. He was a president of Constituent Assembly, but he is also elected as the first president of India by the Constituent Assembly itself. Okay, so the total time taken is almost 3 years. You can say like 13 days or 12 days, short of 3 years. So 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. If you see a month as 31 days, if you are seeing, then like maybe like 13 days short of 3 years. 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. 13 more days and it would have been 3 years. So, like in a total of 11 sessions, like how you have budget session, monsoon session, parliament, like that, 11 sessions it had taken to complete the entire task of preparing constitution. And for almost 114 days, they had considered a draft constitution itself. Okay, expenditure was almost like 64 lakhs. Anyways, these are some facts. Final session on Jan 24, 1950. Actually, the task was almost over on November 26th, 1949 itself. So, on November 26, 1949 itself, the task was completed. Okay, and many of the provisions of the Constitution, okay, they came into force on 1950, but some provisions came into force immediately after we have gained independence in 1947. For example, with respect to citizenship, okay, with respect to provisions with respect to even elections. So, some of them they have come in force earlier, but most of the provisions, majority of the provisions, they came into force on Jan 26, 1950. That is, which we are celebrating as a Republic Day. Anyways, so Constituent Assembly, it had worked both as preparing constitution, but the preparing constitution part got completed, and they have done some other works also, adoption, etc. works also they have done. So its task is complete, but their other work was there, which was like acting like a legislative body, acting like a provisional parliament. Like a provisional parliament means it is not an elected parliament like Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, but provisional. Like suppose you don't have the final certificate, they give you provisional certificate. But the time being, so it was the time being, this was a parliament. Until why? Because you have to conduct elections to the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. So until the first general elections had happened in 1951-52, sir, why didn't they conduct immediately general elections? Why can't they conduct? Why should this act as provisional parliament? Because we in the Constitution we had universal adult franchise. You should give voting right to everyone. First, enroll them as voters. The names of all these people who are of eligible age, at that time 21 years, later brought down to 18 by 61st Constitutional Amendment. But at that time it was 21 years. So who are there people of that age? They are all now eligible to vote. You should register their names as voters in the electoral roll. So that takes time. So you should go to the remote corners of India and see that all the names are registered as voters, because on universal adult franchise basis elections were to be conducted. So that's why it took some time until 1951-52 for the first general elections to be conducted. Until that time, Constituent Assembly had only worked as provisional parliament, making ordinary laws of the land. So this was the other tasks that the Constituent Assembly had performed. There were committees. So Constituent Assembly worked in committees. So you have to just look at some of the major committees. Minor committees are not so important. So it works in committees. So what should the union powers be? What should be the states' powers be? What should be the, there should be a committee on fundamental rights, minorities and tribal affairs. Like that, there are various committees are there. There should be a drafting committee. Like that, different committees, they are like teams working on a certain aspect that has to be included in the constitution. So if you see, most of the major committees are headed by either Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, or Rajendra Prasad, who was the president himself, or B.R. Ambedkar. So you would see that, Jawaharlal Nehru, so he was the chairman under whom there was committee, he and the members. So chairman we are seeing, Nehru was the chairman of committees, some of the major committees, Union Powers Committee, Union Constitution Committee, and even States Committee. So he was the chairman. You would see that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, so he was the chairman of Provincial Constitution Committee and Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, Minorities and Tribal Areas. And when it comes to Rajendra Prasad, so he was the president of Constituent Assembly. So rules of procedures that happen in the Constituent Assembly, and even with respect to steering committee as to how things have to be moved forward, what should be the procedures related to that, the president himself was the chairman. And important one, drafting committee, B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman. So drafting committee, it was entrusted with the task of preparing a draft of the new constitution. So the first draft and all, B.N. Rao had put forth, who was the legal advisor, B.N. Rao, he had put, but the important task of actually preparing the draft of the new constitution was entrusted to B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman, and there were other members also once you give a look. But remember Dr. B.R. Ambedkar as the chairman of a drafting committee. So this was the committee, okay. So, and you can see Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman of the drafting committee. So, and enactment of the constitution. So the preparation of constitution and its adoption, the work got completed. The draft constitution was declared as passed, means it was passed, and all of them, they have signed and they said that okay, it is passed. That was done by November 26, 1949 itself. It received signatures of all the members and the president. The president, the members, all have signed. Okay, we completed preparation of constitution. So it got declared as passed on November 26, 1949 itself. The work is over, and that is the date you will even find in the preamble. But it did not come into force. The entire constitution did not come into force immediately on November 26, 1949. So though the work is over, which today we are celebrating this as Samvidhan Divas, as suggested by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2015, he suggested this day on which the task got completed, it is adopted, declared as passed. So that day we are celebrating as Constitution Day or Samvidhan Divas, we are celebrating November 26, 1949, date mentioned even in the preamble. But it came into force later. Okay, it did not immediately come into force. So you would see that it came into force on Jan 26, 1950. So why you would see that, why to delay by, you are seeing 2 months. 2 months delay is there in making into force, because Jan 26th in 1930, Jan 26 was celebrated as Purna Swaraj Day. Purna Swaraj means complete independence, because Britishers were reluctant to give complete independence. So Jan 26, 1930, they celebrated as Purna Swaraj. We want Purna Swaraj, complete independence, not this, half Swaraj, Ada this Swaraj we don't want. If you want, we want Britishers to go away. We want complete independence. We don't want to be like a dominion, a self-governing entity with some autonomy, etc. We don't need. We want complete independence. Purna Swaraj Day. So like that they celebrated. So 20 years of commemoration. Why don't we wait just 2 more months so that on Jan 26, 1950, let us celebrate, commemorating the 20 years of when we fought for freedom, Purna Swaraj Day. So like that, okay. So they had waited till that period. So on Jan 26, 1950 is when the date of commencement of constitution, we say, date of commencement, constitution, the entire constitution is coming into force. Before Jan 26, 1950, only some parts had come into some force, like the provisions with respect to elections, provisions with respect to citizenship, because we became independent now, we have to see who are citizens, who are not citizens. So those, some of them have come into force, but otherwise, the entire constitution, fundamental rights and other things, those all we say on Jan 26, 1950, they have come into force. That's why we're saying commencement of constitution, which we are celebrating as a Republic Day. Okay, and when constitution on November 26, 1949, as it was adopted at that time, in the original constitution, if you see, it had a preamble, it had about 395 articles and 8 schedules. Of course, now you would see that, yes, we have a preamble, and there was a slight amendment done to the preamble also later, and the articles number had increased, gone to 470, and schedules number also had gone to 12. So, and B.R. Ambedkar, the then law minister who was there, part of the first Nehru ministry, we say. So he was part of the cabinet at that time, first Nehru ministry, though he was not from Indian National Congress. So he was part of Nehru's ministry. So he piloted this draft constitution in the assembly, and that's why he is called as the father of Constitution of India, or also called as chief architect of Constitution of India, we say. So even though major part we are saying it came into force on Jan 26, 1950, some provisions related to citizenship, elections, provisional parliament, some temporary transitional provisions, they all came into force, immediate effect from November 26, 1949. So they came immediately, they came into effect, and not Jan 26, because citizenship and these things are more important. And lot of times these Constituent Assembly makers, these Constituent Assembly members, we refer to them as founding fathers of our constitution, we say. But the area which we neglect is, why only like fathers? What about our founding mothers? Okay, so were there no women members in the Constituent Assembly? They were there. So this is something which has been, not so often seen in books, etc. It is not seen. But UPSC generally tries to get into those aspects which have been hitherto neglected and not asked, or you don't find in the standard books. Yes, there were 15 women members, 15 women members were there in the Constituent Assembly, who also have taken an active part. Most of them were freedom fighters who have taken part in the freedom struggle, who have also participated in the constitution making. So their contribution should not be neglected. Okay, so we see this age of, when we speak about gender equality. Okay, so women who have been relegated to a lower status, unfortunately, in a patriarchal society, their contributions to freedom struggle, their contributions to constitution making should be brought to the fore and highlighted. That's why in freedom movement also in history, you see questions asked about women freedom fighters. Then in the Constituent Assembly also, what about the women members of Constituent Assembly? There are chances that they can ask. So you can see the 15 members, you can go through these names and also see their contributions also. Some of them are important. You must have heard of Durgabai Deshmukh. So you also heard of maybe Leela Roy. You would see that Rajkumari Amrut Kaur, she was also the only a woman member of Nehru's cabinet. She was the health minister at that time. So Nehru's first ministry, so it was the first ministry Nehru's, even before the elections, it was like a provisional government. It was first Nehru ministry. In that, she became the woman minister in Nehru's cabinet, the first woman cabinet minister in India. in Nehru's Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. And you must have heard of Sarojini Naidu, okay, Suchita Kriplani. So these are a lot of freedom fighters. You must have heard of Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, also sister of Jawaharlal Nehru. So once you go through the list of women members and their contributions from history viewpoint also, this is important. Okay, and some other important facts with respect to Constituent Assembly. So Constituent Assembly also had a symbol, elephant, okay, legal advisor, I told you B.N. Rao. So secretary was there, H.V.R. Iyengar. So chief draftsman was there who participated in the draftsman work, okay, S.N. Mukherjee. And remember, the original Constitution of India is handwritten in flowing italic style by Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada. So it was written, handwritten. Remember, it was not typed, it was handwritten, okay, in a flowing italic style by Prem Bihari Narayan, and Hindi version was written by Vasant Krishan Vaidya. So, and the original version was also beautified by artists from the Shantiniketan school. So Nandlal Bose was very instrumental, along with them Beor Ram Manohar Sinha. So he also participated in beautifying. The artwork is done on the pages of the original Constitution. So not from polity viewpoint, but from culture, art and culture viewpoint. Some, if they want to ask a question, they might ask who was the person who was instrumental in decorating the pages of Constitution with artwork, beautiful artwork which depicted scenes of our long cultural, rich cultural heritage, okay, and our history. So they have put artwork and illustrations, various scenes of our history, various periods of our history. So like Mohenjo-daro times in the Indus Valley, the Vedic period, the Gupta and Mauryan Empire, the Mughal era, even national freedom movement. So these images were nicely drawn. The beautiful artwork was put on the pages of the Constitution. Our rich heritage, our rich history of 4,000 years was nicely put on the pages of Constitution. You can see some facts here. So to the first draft, many amendments were also brought, okay, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had done a lot of painstaking work he had done, in going through the provisions and making the draft work that had to be done, amendments that were brought in, why they were brought in, why they have to be rejected. All these were explained by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. They were passed, some of them they didn't get passed. So this work was all done. So that's why Chairman of Drafting Committee, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, is called Chief Architect of the Constitution. Handwritten, I told you, by Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada. So he's a calligrapher. So on 26 November 1949, that the final draft was ready, adopted and passed. But only legally enforced came commencement 26 Jan 1950. Also, national emblem was also adopted, and also the signing of the signing and all work was done earlier. So this is the artwork that I am speaking about by Nandlal Bose of Shantiniketan. So you can see images of Ramayana, okay, and on fundamental rights part 3, the original Constitution, you will see pictures from Ramayana, from Mahabharata, from Akbar's court, okay, like that. The various images, nice artwork was done, okay. And you are saying, sir, original Constitution, see, there is not, even there is an original Constitution which was handwritten, it is still preserved, okay, it is still preserved. It doesn't mean that, you may have Constitution in your app, that is also the same Constitution, but just that, just because they have adopted it, they have signed it, all the members' signatures are there, and it is a handwritten one, so it is preserved, okay, in a specially, designed helium filled case is there in the library of Parliament of India. So you can see here, so it is preserved, the original Constitution copy is preserved in a special helium filled case in Parliament of India's library. If you go, you will find that. So this was the seal, the symbol of our Constituent Assembly, elephant. Okay, when it started, there was undivided India, so it is put like this. Okay, so but later partition had occurred. So 46 the work started, 47 partition had occurred. Later you are preparing Constitution for India. So almost 3 years it had taken to make the Constitution. Okay, so fine, this is about making of the Constitution of India. So when you see the Constitution of India, you would see that there is a preamble, there are parts. In parts you would find articles. In articles you will find clauses. For example, if there is like Article 19, so in that this is clause. So in that again there could be subclause. So the article, there may be clauses, there may be subclauses, and this may be in one part. Like let's say this is part 3 of the Constitution. So parts are like chapters of your book. Preamble is like the preface or the foreword, like that you are finding. Of course, it's much important than just a foreword. So preamble and parts. In parts there are articles. In articles there are clauses in which you would find the provisions of the Constitution. There are also schedules. Schedules are like the annexures that you see towards the end of your book, like tables you find or list of things that you find at the end of your book, like annexure, which are like, go and refer to annex number so and so, annexure so and so, like that go and refer to so and so table that you are finding in books. So schedules are like that, because it becomes very difficult to put an entire list or an entire table within the articles. So it would disturb the flow of the article. So go and refer to so and so table at the end of the book, like that. Go and refer to so and so schedule, like that. Schedules are there. So when original Constitution had 8 schedules, so 4 more were added. Now you have 12 schedules, and Constitution can be amended. So it has been amended 105 times up to now. 105 times. The recent Constitution amendment was 105th Constitutional Amendment. Okay, so this is about Constitution of India.